I spent thousands of dollars on all kinds of smart home tech in my house, but these 7 items changed everything. One of them even doubles as a smart security system for $0 extra. Here's the tech I wish I bought on day one. So to kick things off, these are the lights in my attic/office. They are big, they are ugly, and worst of all, they are very dim. Now I could have probably switched out the light bulb inside of them to fix that, and I did think of that, but given how multi-purpose that this room is, from soldering to reading a book to programming, I wanted something that was not only brighter, but also easier on the eyes and something that could change color. And in the end, I ended up buying 2 packs of these Govee Lightstrip Pro 2s, the 10-meter version, and installed them on these wooden trusses that support the roof. And the result is awesome. Not only can they go brighter than the big lamps that I used to have, the light is also more diffused and the colors look nicer. I can also change the colors to reflect what I'm doing or what time of the day it is, for example. Oh, and as you might have noticed, they do also have fully addressable RGBs inside of them, which just gives the option for some really cool effects as well. So yeah, I now pretty much never use the lamps in this room because these strips are just so much better. Should have gotten these since the start. Now you're probably thinking, what about those light switches? I mean, nothing is more annoying than having some smart lights and having to take out your phone to open some app every time you want to use the lights. So this is where motion sensors come in. Now look, motion sensors are far from new and they are some of the most common sensors available, but this is what actually makes them so good because they are incredibly cheap. You can order them for only a couple of dollars on sites like AliExpress, and even if you don't want to order there, the ones IKEA are selling right now are not much more expensive and they're also really good. Then I just connect up the Govee lights and the motion sensors into my smart home platform of choice, which in my case is Home Assistant, and voila! Automatic lights now are turning on every time I come up the stairs. Now the reason I bring these up is because they make such a big difference in making your smart home more frictionless. It just makes it so that things happen automatically without you having to think about it, which is just so convenient. Now motion sensors are great for turning lights on, but figuring out when to turn a light back off can sometimes be a bit tricky with motion sensors. Thankfully, I did think of a little hack for this. Since most motion sensors also have a light sensor built into them, I made an automation that triggers if the lights are on and if I hold my finger on the light sensor. This will turn off the lights and disable the motion sensor for the next 10 seconds. Perfect when I'm done working and want to head downstairs. This, in a way, essentially turns the motion sensor into an off button as well. But what if I'm already at my desk and I want to adjust the lights throughout the day? Well, one thing that completely ruins my focus when I'm working is pulling out my phone. So I try to avoid that at all costs. But I do still want to do certain things like adjusting my lights or checking my security cameras. So how do I do that without pulling out my phone? So to make sure I don't have to use my phone to do that, I bought this cheap Lenovo tablet that sits on my desk running fully kiosk browser. It then displays a smart home dashboard that I made in Home Assistant. This allows me to adjust the lights, see my 3D printer status, check weather, solar data, see my security cameras, and see my agenda to make sure I don't miss any meetings. This is extremely handy and I use this every single day. What I love about the setup is that this is the only app that is installed on this tablet. So there's no other distractions. And thanks to the fully kiosk browser app, the display automatically turns on when I sit down at my desk and automatically turns off when I leave my desk. Again, super frictionless. I don't have to think about it, and that just makes everything so much better. If you ever want to set up something like this for yourself, I do highly recommend it. I specifically recommend Lenovo tablets since they have some battery protection built in the settings that you can enable that will keep the battery between 40 and 60% charged. So you can actually just leave the tablet plugged in day and night without having to worry about the battery getting damaged or getting swollen. Also make sure you don't waste too much money on this. It's super easy to throw a whole bunch of money at the wall and buy a super expensive premium Android tablet that is way overpowered. But remember, all you really need to do on this tablet is running a browser, so you don't really need a very powerful tablet. I just made sure that the one I bought had a nice screen, and that's the only thing I cared about. All of the other specs didn't really matter to me. And since I bought it on the used market, I had to pay less than 100 euros for it, which was a pretty good deal. Now, I just mentioned that 3D printer progress in my dashboard, and that brings me on to my next item that I regret not buying sooner, and that is my 3D printer. Now, I know this might sound like a bit of an unusual item to include in a smart home video, but if you think about it, there's no real reason as to why that would be weird. The days that you had to be some sort of massive geek spending hours fine-tuning and modifying your printer in order to make it print anything are long gone. Modern printers are extremely easy to use and very hands-off. If you just want to print something that just works, you can literally do that in the mobile app on your phone in just a few taps. And if you do want more advanced options, well, those are available as well on the desktop app. And let me tell you, you don't have to be some sort of designer or 3D CAD drawing expert in order to use a 3D printer. If you just browse around on websites like makerworld.com, for example, this is extremely addicting. That website is full of amazing designs for interior design, replacement parts for things that might be broken, or stuff that you didn't know you need, but now you can't live without. And all of the designs that are on there are free. So you can just print whatever you want, and it's really, really addicting, and it's really handy to have. Now, I personally have a Bambu P1S printer, and I'm really happy with this printer, but the same principles apply to many of the other brands that are out there as well, like Creality, Prusa, Elgu, and so on. And my Bambu printer also nicely integrates with Home Assistant, hence why I can see its progress on the dashboard, which for me is just the cherry on top. Speaking of useful prints, I printed this mount for this security camera that I have installed outside of my house, which is the perfect segue to my next item, security cameras. Now look, you might think that security cameras aren't very exciting to talk about, and I do get that, but they are extremely important. This is the kind of device that people often buy after something went wrong and just don't be that person, you know? Having various cameras dotted around your property gives so much peace of mind, and honestly, it's the kind of thing you should buy from day one once you move into a new place, in my opinion. Now, picking a good brand of security cameras isn't always easy because there are some really bad and weird options out there. And some of them are like cloud-based and require a subscription, which, let's face it, nobody likes that. And since I didn't want any of that, I personally went with Reolink. This isn't sponsored or anything, but I have been very happy with these cameras. And again, perfect integration into my dashboards is always a plus. I'm actually planning a future video about all the automations that I have programmed on these cameras. So if you don't want to miss that video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are some really unique automations in there that you probably haven't thought of. Speaking of things that people usually buy after it's too late, smoke detectors. Now look, if you own a property, you just need smoke detectors, right? It's that simple. Now you don't need smart smoke detectors necessarily if you can't afford them or whatever, but I do highly recommend them. When I was looking to buy smart smoke detectors, I had the following requirements for myself. They should not use Wi-Fi because of the massive battery drain that they tend to have, and also cause more congestion because there are just more clients on the network. I wanted all of my smoke detectors to be interconnected, which means that if one smoke detector triggers and goes off, then all the smoke detectors in the house would go off. I also wanted them to be affordable since I needed 6 units in total around my house. I didn't want them to cost like 50 euros each or even more, because that would just end up being a very expensive setup overall. I also wanted long battery life, like 5 to maybe even 10 years, just so that I don't have to worry about the battery too much. And of course, it had to have smart home integration, which in my case was Home Assistant, and I'll explain why that was important later. Eventually, I landed on the Xsense XS01M system. Again, this isn't sponsored or anything, but this system ticked every box for me. The whole kit of 6 units only was about 100 euros, which is actually very affordable. Their app works great and seamlessly integrated with Home Assistant. And of course, you do also get alerts when you aren't at home, which really is kind of the best feature of smart smoke detectors. These smoke detectors used a proprietary wireless signal, hence why you need a hub to use them. But again, I don't really see that as a negative. I prefer them to not use Wi-Fi, so this was fine to me. Also, the wireless range that they have between the hub and the smoke detectors is crazy. Like, it's way better than Wi-Fi because the proprietary signal is like a low frequency kind of thing, so it actually penetrates walls way better than Wi-Fi does. Now, the reason I wanted smart home integration is because that gave me the ability to also use these as intrusion alarms. Basically, by adding some simple motion sensors throughout the house, I can set up an automation at night or when I'm not at home, so that any motion inside the home will also set off the fire alarm, basically making it so that it also functions as an intrusion alarm, while basically costing zero extra money because people usually already have these motion sensors around the house. Just make sure you don't get fined for false alarms. Check the settings in the app of your smart smoke detectors to make sure that it doesn't like automatically contact the fire department where you live. You would not want that to happen when you accidentally trigger this automation. Speaking of adding things to your smart home for almost no money, you know how adding buttons to your smart home is usually not that expensive? They cost like $10 or so a piece, which isn't too bad. However, if you want to add dozens or maybe even hundreds of buttons to your home, this can add up very quickly. This is because each button has its own mechanical switch inside, as well as batteries, a circuit board, and wireless antennas. But if you think about it, having all of those electronics in each individual button is a bit redundant, right? What if instead we carry around the electronics with us and we activate the button at specific places in our house? This is basically what NFC tags are designed for. With an NFC tag, your phone essentially becomes the button, and the NFC tag is simply an indicator on what that button should trigger. By simply holding up your phone against the tag, you can trigger any action like turning on a light or adding an item to your shopping list, for example. And because the tags themselves contain almost no electronics, you don't have to worry about them running out of battery, and they're also really affordable. You can literally have hundreds of them spread around the house for very little money, and each of them can trigger an individual action. And now, yes, you do have to pull out your phone in order to trigger these NFC tags, which can be a bit slower than pressing a button, but for things that you don't interact with that often, you just can't really beat the price. For years, I haven't really been all that interested in NFC tags until I realized that they are basically like very cheap buttons and that they are incredibly easy to program and very easy to use. And they also have the added benefit of not requiring batteries and not contributing to wireless congestion. What I also really like about them is that they are incredibly small and thin. They're basically like stickers, so you can actually hide them in very unexpected places. Like in my bedroom, for example, where I've put an NFC tag behind the light switch, so when I press the light switch, it just turns on the big lights like normal, but if I hold up my phone against the light switch, it actually turns on the night lights. These are just so useful given how cheap they are, and you would be crazy if you didn't buy at least some of them. And I wish I realized that sooner. And so that about wraps up this video. If you guys are looking forward to another video I'm planning about automations that I've made with all of these devices, then make sure you don't miss that video by subscribing to the channel. Also, let me know down below in the comments if you think I missed something and if you have a device in your smart home that you can't live without and that you wish you bought sooner. Alright, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.